welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com.
What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you guys so much for jumping onto a live stream here with me following the Pittsburgh Steelers pre-draft press conference over at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex in the South Side. It was a very interesting day, a very, very intriguing pre-draft press conference from Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan. Make sure to drop all your questions in here. I'll make sure to answer as much of them as I can in the next half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And with that, I'm going to crack open this prime and we're going to get started here as we dive into what's to come. I want to say the biggest takeaways that I think I had with this pre-draft press conference is the biggest takeaway that I think almost anybody in attendance had, and that is that the Steelers seem very optimistic, very willing, and very excited to trade, or at least see what comes trade-wise with that 32nd pick. Now, 17 is obviously the hottest topic of conversation, and we're going to dive into all of that. But with 32, man, they seem excited. They seem very, very outgoing about the possibilities that will come in that 24-hour window, especially if a quarterback slides. Mike Tomlin made that known, and I think I've followed that notion the entire time. If a guy like Hendon Hooker falls, a guy like Will Levis somehow slides out of the first round or slides anywhere near the end of the first round, people are going to start calling the Pittsburgh Steelers immediately and making some pretty big offers. And then you have that 24-hour gap period where anything could happen. And I think that if I had to guess, something is going to happen. And I think that it will be quite big for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Omar Khan has done nothing but prove that he is a wizard at being a general manager, just like he was a wizard at creating contracts for free agents. And I don't expect anything less from him on Thursday come the NFL draft. With that, let's get some energy drinks in us and let's crack open this chat here. Please toss me some questions and I'll love to stay on, like I said, about a half hour, 45 minutes, answer anything that you guys got to toss at me. So let's talk what will happen at 17. I think that is a big one for the Pittsburgh Steelers, one that in recent days and probably a little bit over a week, the Pittsburgh Steelers have caught plenty of attention with. And there's a lot of reports out there. Todd McShay said yesterday that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been in contact with the Tennessee Titans and the Chicago Bears about trading up to 9 or 11 for an offensive tackle. I think I follow that same notion. I think I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and I've looked at them the entire time that we've talked about who they'll trade up to draft if they did trade up to draft at number 9 with the Chicago Bears. And I think I still sit there and say the most obvious answer is Paris Johnson Jr. He's a left tackle. He's probably the star of the left tackle group in this NFL draft class. Peter Skoronski is a big name to draft, but I think the Steelers view him as an interior offensive lineman, and because of that, he's not necessarily on their radar. So I think that Paris Johnson is the big name to watch at this point. So let's dive into some questions here. Please toss all your questions in the chat. Love to answer as many of them as I can. Steelers have to make a splash with all the picks. Any trades that do happen need to be a day one impact player, because with the changes and assets added, playoff push for sure, maybe even the big game too. I've been very open about the fact that I think the Steelers have a Super Bowl window that opens this season. I don't think that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl this season, but I think that it always opens when you have a rookie quarterback who could win, and I think Kenny Pickett has shown that he could win, a defense that is good, and the Steelers defense was very good last season. And on top of that, you've made the moves on offense to kind of fill those holes, especially on the offensive line. So I think that the Steelers do have a shot at being a very good team this season and kind of proving that the wheels are in motion to make that Super Bowl run. Any trades that do happen, they do have to be a day one impact guy. The Steelers aren't going to come in here and trade up for, a Darnell Wright. And I think that Darnell Wright's probably the perfect name, because if you trade up for Darnell Wright, he could come in here and be a day one starter, 100%. But you don't know if he's going to be a huge impact at left tackle. You don't know how much time he's going to need to adjust. And really, there are a lot of mock drafts, especially early in this process, that didn't have him higher than 17, let alone at 17. A lot of people talked about maybe he's a 32nd pick for the Steelers. Look, I agree. I think that if they make a move, it's got to be for a guy that could change this team 100% instantly. And I think that, again, I think Paris Johnson's that guy. Do you think the Steelers will try to go after a top corner or left tackle? And if so, do you think they'll trade up? So, yeah, as we keep talking about this, yeah, Paris Johnson's the guy. Let me tell you why I believe Paris Johnson is top of their target list. So, Broderick Jones is probably number 2, and I think he fits all of the needs, the necessities of the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they're looking to trade up to do. But I think Paris Johnson doesn't leave any risk. Broderick Jones has some risk in the pass protection game. I don't think he's necessarily the best pass blocker right now. He's got some fundamental things, a little bit of technique to clear up sooner rather than later. That being said, Paris Johnson's a dude that could come in here, be a star left tackle. The Pittsburgh Steelers took him out to dinner at his pro day, and we could talk about, DeJuan Jones. It was DeJuan Jones. The Steelers have shown just as much interest in Paris Johnson as they have DeJuan Jones. And the only difference would have been a pre-draft visit that the Steelers or DeJuan Jones, don't know which side canceled it, but it was canceled. So he never actually showed up in Pittsburgh. Paris Johnson has been top of their target, a sleeper, because people don't know where he's going to go in the draft. I'm hearing this guy could go as early as pick number 3 to the Arizona Cardinals, or as far back as 11 or 12 to the Houston Texans or Tennessee Titans. Now, it wouldn't be the Houston Texans. They'd trade out of there, but that's where the Steelers would make a move to go up and get their guy. But I've heard that Paris Johnson's going to be all over the board. I think he's a top 10 guy in this draft, and I think that he's the only left tackle that you could draft and for sure know exactly what you're going to get in this NFL draft class. There's no question marks. If the Steelers are going to make a move, you look back at the Devin Bush trade and you say, well, there were little question marks there, but there were definitely some. I think there's some question marks with Broderick Jones. I think there's a lot of question marks with Peter Skoronski. I don't think there's any question marks with Paris Johnson, and I think that's the guy that they would love to move up and get. It really comes down to Matt Canada, though, and if TJ stays healthy, we're a different team of intimidation when he's off the field. Yeah, I agree. I think TJ Watt changes a lot. Matt Canada, I still have very little faith in, but, what are you going to do? We're this far in. You can't change anything that the Steelers have already done. And I think that Matt Canada will hold this team back, certainly. I don't have very high expectations for an offensive coordinator who's never proven that he could succeed in the NFL. And until proven otherwise, I think everybody should have those same expectations as well. I keep reading how Bijan Robinson is a generational talent. Is there any world where if the Steelers traded down from 17 to the mid-20s, top TBs and offensive tackles are gone, they should draft him? No, there's not, unfortunately. Bijan Robinson. So the thing is that you don't draft a running back in the first round, right? That's just they're not worth it. That's why guys like Saquon and Austin Eckler aren't getting paid, because they're running backs, and running backs have short shelf lives with huge injury risks. And in today's NFL can be replaced by almost anybody. I mean, you look at what Atlanta did last year with all of their guys, and they were just a rotational group of this guy could run the football well, that guy could run the football well. The Steelers showed it this year with when Najee wasn't running well, Jaylen Warren was running well. And then when everybody was down, Benny Snell Jr. ran well, Anthony McFarland ran well. Running backs are not a need like they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when guys like Zeke were coming into the NFL, or even when Saquon was coming into the NFL. Bijan Robinson is a generational talent, and I think he fits very well in Pittsburgh, but I don't think he fits any better than Najee Harris fits. And I get that people have their ups and downs about Najee Harris, but I wouldn't go back and draft Najee Harris in the first round, and I wouldn't draft Bijan Robinson in the first round either. I think for a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who have the 10th pick in the draft, who don't really have a hole at all on this team, and just pay Jalen Hurts a boatload of money, I think that's like almost a gift to just say, hey, well, running backs don't go in the first round, but we don't really need anybody. And Bijan Robinson is a generational talent. So let's just add him to the roster and just make this whole thing even better. I don't think the Steelers are in that same position. I think if you draft it, if you move down from 17 into the mid-20s, all the cornerbacks are gone, all the offensive tackles are gone. At that point, you're going to look at a guy like Brian Brzee, Nolan Smith, if he's still on the board, which I'm hearing he could go as high as 8. Some edge rushers, maybe Lucas Van Ness slides, Darnell Wright slides. I don't know. I just think that at that point, either you keep trading back, You take a wide receiver. I would take a wide receiver before I took a running back, or you just fill the next need on your list. But I don't think a running back is anywhere near, especially in Pittsburgh, where unfortunately there's still a bell cow running back system, and it just, it just doesn't work. My concern is the value of 17, 32, 49 to move up to get Paris. No, I've figured from the beginning that they're not going to get rid of 32 for a move up into the first round. Even if they move up into the top 10, I don't think they're giving up 32. I think they would give up 49, and I think that they would give up a second or a third round next year and 17, but I think that they are deadlocked on keeping 32 because they understand the value of that pick leaving day one into day two of the NFL draft. If you give up 17, 49 and a second next year, you got to feel really good about that trade, especially if you could go get your franchise left tackle. This is a very young football team. There are a lot of guys that, they'll need to be re-signed, but Mason Cole is 26 years old. James Daniels is 25 years old. Chuks Okorafor is 25 years old. You'll now have a new left guard and a rookie left tackle. Your entire wide receiver core is young. Your running back's young. Your quarterback's young. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith will both be under contracts. Like, the list goes on. You could fill your holes in the first round and the third round with the second round pick this year, with the third and fourth round pick this year. I just think that you don't give up 32 and you still have so much value there to work with, even if you give up a little bit. Should the Steelers emphasize a need for a third edge rusher as well as a middle linebacker? And if so, who do you recommend? Yeah, I'd say yes for both of these. The question is where? Dorian Williams out of Tulane in the fourth round-ish, 120, maybe 80, if depending on how the board's going, but 120 would be the sweet spot in my eyes. Is just the perfect inside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Super athletic, used to play running back, has great instincts, is a hitter. He's a thumper for a guy who used to play running back. And I guess that shouldn't surprise me because Mark Robinson's a former running back who's also a thumper. But he's a guy that just makes a lot of sense for what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for at inside linebacker and what they already have, because they already have a Landon Roberts who's just that hardcore run stuffing running back, another Robert Spillane. They have Cole Holcomb, who's that athletic 3-down inside linebacker, who's hopefully their next star inside linebacker. And I think he's got that potential. You have Mark Robinson, who could develop into something, but he's still so young and so raw that you don't know where he's going to go in his NFL career. You bring in a Dorian Williams, and he's your pass coverage guy he's got to develop, obviously, but in a fourth round pick, you can only have so much expectations. You let him develop, you use everybody, you kind of circulate everybody through. You have Tanner Muse, who probably won't touch the field on defense, but you have Keanu Neal, who has played some inside linebacker, could play box safety. I think that Dorian Williams is a good call there. And then when it comes to the edge rushers, I mean, you could draft anybody. Like, if we're being totally honest, this edge rusher class is so deep and so good that I think that you could wait until the third round, the fourth round, and get somebody that could come in and be plugged in on day one as that third edge rusher and feel really good about it. Now, if I was going to pick between the two, I'm going edge rusher all day over inside linebacker, just because the need is probably there. You have nobody right now besides Quincy Roche behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. That's a super concerning position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. One that I thought they would have much more emphasis on this offseason. I think they did. I think they had all eyes all locked in on Bud Dupree and did a really, really bad job of locking up that contract. But I don't know. Whispers Deonte Banks. So as everybody knows, Steeler DB, which I'm going to give him a little plug. Here's my boy Derek. Everybody knows Derek Bell, podcast Fridays, all Steelers talk, Steelers draft talk on Thursdays, Wednesday, possibly drafting this week. That's his boy, been his boy this entire time. My thoughts on Deonte Banks and if the Steelers are actually interested are up in the air. I think that the Steelers do love Deonte Banks, and I have heard that half of the Steelers front office, if given the opportunity, wants to draft Joey Porter Jr. The other half, which might include Mike Tomlin, wants to draft Deonte Banks if that presents itself. Now, I still think that a trade up for an offensive tackle is very much so on their wish list. But again, we just talked about how Paris Johnson might go as high as 3 in the NFL draft. That's not a move the Steelers are willing to make. Broderick Jones brings some complications, and I don't think they love him as much as they love Paris Johnson. Deonte Banks is a guy who comes in 3-4 speed, has the ability to press man, could play inside, could play outside. He fills a bunch of holes for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's still developing, which I think is so key, to still be developing, to come into the NFL and learn from a guy like Patrick Peterson would be so, so nice for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially if you could use him on the outside and the inside. I just think that matches so many holes of what they're trying to do. At the same time, Joey Porter Jr. is Joey Porter Jr. He's got all the physical traits. He did all the testing the way you wanted him to do the testing. He's an athletic freak. He's got his question marks. I think he's a little grabby, but I think a lot of people in college are grabby. So I don't know how much emphasis I'm going to put on that. I'd go Deonte Banks over Joey Porter Jr. I don't think a lot of people would agree with me there. But if we're being totally honest, 100% honest, I'm really open to the Pittsburgh Steelers not drafting a corner at 17 and waiting until 32 or waiting until 49 and drafting a corner. And I don't think they lose all that value compared to what they would lose in an offensive tackle or a defensive tackle or, maybe an offensive guard, depending on who's there. But I don't think that they lose as much talent at cornerback as they do other positions from 17 to 32. And I'd be cool if they slid down a little bit. There's been whispers, I laugh as I say this, of DJ being moved. So these whispers, just so everybody's 100% clear, there's a difference between whispers and what fans / Andrew Filipponi pushes on 93.7 The Fan. It's not true. The Pittsburgh Steelers would not trade Deontay Johnson. They wouldn't even consider trading Deontay Johnson. They have no consideration of trading Deontay Johnson. They absolutely love Deontay Johnson, and they should love Deontay Johnson. He's the best wide receiver in Pittsburgh. He's exactly what the Steelers want. He's exactly what Kenny Pickett would want in a wide receiver. I get it that he's a wide receiver who has a bad rep with the fans, and that's never going to change. As much as I love the city of Pittsburgh, and I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so I fully understand what it's like. You hit a point with a player where that player is just no longer liked. No matter what they do or how good they get, that player will no longer be liked. Deontay Johnson is currently that player, and it will remain that player. So he'll be the hottest topic of conversation, and he'll be the first one that gets tossed of, oh, well, he should get traded here, or he could get traded here, or does this guy mean that Deontay Johnson is going to get traded? At the end of the day, the Steelers know that Deontay Johnson is probably the best route runner in football. The reason that he didn't score a touchdown last season is more on the quarterbacks than it is on Deontay Johnson. And on top of that, he is the best leader in the locker room offensively, outside of Kenny Pickett, obviously, but he is that dude. I think I give him a stamp over Najee Harris as a leader. He's a great figure for George Pickens and Calvin Austin, and Calvin Austin has told me a dozen times how much work Deontay has put in with these two to help them develop. And Mike Tomlin, nobody else, just loves this guy. So no, he's not going anywhere. Sorry. Any chance we could keep 17 and be able to get a steal for pick 9? I don't think so. I think you have to give up 17 to move up to 9, unfortunately. I just find it, trading into that top 10, you got to give up a first-round pick. If you're trading back or even trading to maybe like 15, maybe you'd be able to use 32 and maybe 49 in that scenario. But I think that you have to use 17 to get into the top 10, and probably more. Like, you're probably giving up 17 and something to get into the top 10. But no, unfortunately not. If it's closer to 17, possibly, but not for the top 10. Clark Phillips is a great name to watch. Derek just dropped, who we were just talking about, dropped an article today on wide receivers that the Steelers can get in each round. And at 49, he actually lists Clark Phillips. I think he's a great corner. He's undersized, but I think he could be utilized in the slot very well if that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are going. That does leave a hole on the outside, and you got to remember that, because the Steelers don't have, if Patrick Peterson is going to be your full-time outside corner, that's a concern. I get that he played well last year, but he played in a very zone-heavy scheme. The Steelers were very man-heavy last season. You need somebody on the outside. I think Patrick Peterson's going to bounce in and out, kind of like a Cam Sutton role, maybe move back to safety a little bit. You need somebody on the outside, but Clark Phillips is definitely a name to watch, especially if they double dip. Aaron Rodgers is now a Jet. Congratulations to Aaron Rodgers. I wonder what the trade means for anybody, but I will say that I'm excited for the Jets. Good for the Jets. Good for Jets fans. They'll get a good run. They won't win the Super Bowl, but it's okay. They'll get a good run. That's all you need. Good for the Packers. Jordan Love lost me a lot of money on a bet this year, so not a huge fan of him, but that's all right. That's all right. All right, keep tossing me questions. We're going to keep going here for a good 25 minutes, go through everything that they talked about. Allen Robinson's a huge topic of conversation. Obviously, we talked to him for the first time today. I thought that he was interesting. I thought he had more of a chip on his shoulder, or would have more of a chip on his shoulder than I felt he had coming into the press conference. I thought that he'd be kind of looking at it as like a lot of people are down on me, especially after his social media post where he said that he was the most open wide receiver in the Rams last season. I kind of felt that once he was up there, once he was talking, he understands that he's a veteran and he's here to educate these young guys and work with these young guys. But at the same time, he's got a lot of football left. And I think that that's good. Would have liked to see a little bit more chip. I like Allen Robinson. I think Allen Robinson's a good wide receiver. Would have liked to see a little bit more chip. How do you think he'll be used in Matt Canada's system? I think he'll play a lot of slot receiver for the Steelers. I do think he'll bounce outside, but I could see him as what Chase Claypool was supposed to be, what Juju Smith-Schuster was supposed to be with the Steelers, that big body guy in the middle that the Steelers would very much so like to have, a body that they could utilize in the red zone. I think that's the biggest plus for the Steelers when it comes to the Allen Robinson trade, is that they didn't really have anybody in the red zone last season that they could rely on. And this year they have a huge body in the red zone in Allen Robinson. And I kind of expect them to have another one, because I think that they'll draft a tight end at some point in the draft. And both of them will be utilized very, very well within the 20. That's Allen Robinson's sweet spot. That's where the Steelers are going to utilize this guy as much as humanly possible. Him, George Pickens, just big, huge guys with huge catch radiuses who could go up and get footballs and body people. For Allen Robinson, it'll be on the inside, but he will play some outside as well, 100%. So the Jets get Rodgers, 15 and a 2023 fifth. And the Packers get 13, 42, 207, and a second rounder next year. That's pretty good. That's not a bad trade. Wouldn't say I'm disappointed in the moves. I'm glad that it finally happened so we could stop talking about it. But good for them. Good for both sides. All right, keep tossing questions. Like I said, I got another 20 minutes on here. Anything that you got for the pre-draft press conference, for the NFL draft, for whatever you guys really need to touch on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Plenty to talk about. Plenty that has happened. I get that right now it's a little bit of a dead time, a little bit of a what will happen if the Pittsburgh Steelers do this, or these are the rumors, or blah, 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 blah. I understand that right now it's, we've seen it all. It's been months and months and months of waiting, and now we're here. But there's got to be something. Toss me whatever. I wasn't a Kenny Pickett fan at all. Derpy Entertainment is winning the chat right now, so I appreciate you, my man. I wasn't a Kenny Pickett fan at all until that stretch. He proved it and showed to the fan base. He's a factor like Ben was, but Ben led us to a Super Bowl in year 2 beyond a Hall of Fame D. Why not Kenny, though? I don't know. I think that Ben's defense was different. Two things here. For one, I think Kenny Pickett's a good quarterback. I think he's got a ton of development left before he's like a really good quarterback. I think Ben was a good quarterback in year 2, like pushing really good quarterback in year 2. Totally different. On top of that, Matt Canada is the biggest crutch you could possibly have in the NFL right now, hands down. There is not an offensive coordinator in football that is a bigger crutch to their offense than Matt Canada is. I mean, the dude deserves all the criticism in the world. He deserved no praise from the last season. And all we talked about the year before was, well, he wasn't able to run his offense. Ben Roethlisberger, we blame this, we blame that. No, it's Matt Canada. It's always been on Matt Canada. And I think that with Matt Canada here, your chances of winning a Super Bowl are very low. That being said, I have been shocked and proven wrong before. I could be shocked and proven wrong again. I think the defense is there. I think the offensive line is almost there. I think the wide receiver core is there. I think Najee Harris is there. I think Mike Tomlin is the biggest part of this. I think Matt Canada is the biggest crutch. And if you could overcome him, huge. If you can overcome him, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. But if his contract is up after the season, well, then maybe 2 years from now. What position do you think Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan value the most in the NFL draft? I think it's offensive tackle. I do. I think it's the early offensive tackles. But that being said, I think that in the grand scheme of things, in the what positions have the best depth, I think that the Steelers look at corner and say that's top of the list because it easily is. I think edge rusher might be number 2. I think interior offensive lineman might be number 3. And I'll throw a surprise at you. I think tight end is 4, possibly number 3 ahead of interior offensive lineman. Mike Tomlin jumping in and just saying, oh, tight ends too, super deep in tight ends. To me, that was like a red flag. I was like, oh, okay. All the alarms started going off. Why are you so interested in a tight end? You have 3 tight ends. I fall under the notion that I think Connor Hayward is going to play fullback this season and that Zach Gentry is going to be the 3rd tight end behind Pat Freiermuth and a rookie. So I would say those 4 positions are huge. The next addition in free agency for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's a tough one. I want to say possibly Benny Snell Jr. Possibly. I want to say possibly a left tackle, like an offensive, like another swing tackle to compete with LaRaven Clark. I don't know. It's a tough one right now. That's a very tough question, I would say. I would say that it's a re-signing. My guess would be a re-signing that the Pittsburgh Steelers just want to bring back. A Benny Snell Jr. seems like a really prominent name. They love Benny Snell. They love what he's capable of doing. I think Benny Snell is a very quality backup running back. I wish he gets would have gotten an opportunity in free agency earlier. I think that he's a number 2 on a lot of teams and provides number 2 characteristics and abilities in a lot of teams. He's a really good run blocker or pass blocker, excuse me. He's great at special teams. He could catch the football. He could run for short yardage. He could have those big games if you need him to have those big games. I think he's a really good addition to the running back room. I could see them bringing him in, but I could also see Anthony McFarland being that number 3 and them feeling really good about Anthony McFarland being that number 3. That one's a really tough question. I appreciate that one. I don't know that one. Do you think that the Steelers could possibly trade down with the Chargers and get Deonte Banks at 21? That is intriguing. So there's been those reports out there that Deonte Banks might be higher than Joey Porter Jr. on a number of teams' lists, and maybe, just maybe, he's going to go before 17. If he falls to 17 and Joey Porter Jr., Deontay Johnson, Joey Porter Jr., Devin Witherspoon, and Christian Gonzalez are all gone, I don't think the Steelers take the risk of moving back. I think they just look at him and say, let's do it. That being said, if Joey Porter Jr. and Deonte Banks are both on the board and the Steelers feel very confident that nobody's going to take a corner after them, they could slide back, and I could see that happening because at that moment, this is what the Steelers do. They take every player in the draft and they rank them, and they say, this is our board. And when their pick is up or right before their pick, they will analyze it. And they like to move within 5. That's how they do things. They like to keep it within 5. They don't want to move back past 5 players or past 5 picks. And if they feel that all 5 players in that gap that, okay, well, we're up at 17. Who's the 17th person on our board? Well, the 15th, 16th, 17th player have not been taken yet. Then the Steelers might be interested to say, okay, well, now we're interested in moving back 3 spots because those 3 players are still on the board and all 3 of them can't go yet. If Joey Porter Jr. and Deonte Banks are still on the board on top of a couple other names, I could say maybe. I could definitely say maybe. I could also see them trading back if both of them are gone. I think that might be a more realistic option, but I'm not going to say no to that. I'm definitely not going to say no to that. What tight end does Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan like in this draft class? It's got to be Darnell Washington, right? Like, it's got to be Darnell Washington. The dude is ginormous. He's a physical freak. He's the scariest looking human in this draft class. I don't care what DeJuan Jones has to say about it. If you look like Darnell Washington, 6'12", we'll call him, absolutely jacked, could run a 4.4, jump over whoever you need to jump over, can block anybody. That is a scary human being. Scary human being. I think that the Steelers are super interested in that guy. I wasn't into the Steelers are going to draft a tight end notion until they brought in Darnell Washington for a pre-draft visit. Then it started to circulate. Okay, maybe I could see this. I tossed the theory out of Connor Hayward moving to fullback a long time ago, and I think that that's starting to pick up steam. And then Mike Tomlin said his little nugget at the conference of, and tight ends, and just jumped right in. And I said, well, that it's got to be him. Like, that's got to be the guy that's on their radar. Like, there's nobody else. The drop off after him is not significant. There are very, very, very good tight ends in this class, but none of them offer what the Pittsburgh Steelers need, like Darnell Washington. A huge body for the red zone because they didn't have one last year, and somebody who could block consistently because they didn't have that guy last year, not even in Zach Gentry. Got to be Darnell Washington. It's got to be Darnell Washington. Could the Steelers could the value in this draft with the top 3 Steelers pick be edge rusher, defensive tackle, and linebacker, take a cornerback or an O-line at 80? Definitely could be. I would say that drafting an edge rusher that early would surprise me. I could see second round, maybe 32, maybe 49 for an edge rusher. I think even 32 might be a little high for them, just because the edge rusher class is so deep. I do expect Alex Highsmith to get a contract because I don't think he's going to get a huge contract. I think he's just going to get a very team-friendly, this is a good deal for both sides type of contract on his extension. And then you don't really, like, if you're going to draft somebody at 17 to play edge rusher and have him behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, he's going to play 25, 30 snaps a game. Like, that's just not worth it. Defensive tackle, 100%. I could see them being interested in a guy like Brian Brzee or, Jalen Carter if he somehow slid to the bottom of the top 10 and going up to get him. I think that defensive tackle makes a lot of sense. I don't know that they know where DeMarvin Leal is going to play this season or how much he's going to play on the interior defensive line or if he's going to move to the outside. And then at linebacker, I'd say yes, 100%. Again, that's a questionable one because the really high-end top inside linebackers in this draft class are not very good. Like Trenton Simpson, not very good. Noah Sewell, not very good. Drew Sanders, probably the worst of the bunch. So it's really, really difficult to say that any of them have value ahead of pick 32. I definitely don't think any of them go in the top 17 picks. 32 maybe. 49 is definitely a possibility for one of those guys, but I think that depends on the value in the draft there. And then you could wait on a corner because I think corners are going to be there at 80 and they're going to be very good. I think O-line by pick 80, you're kind of just like, we'll take whoever. But I think at that point, the offensive tackle class is like totally depleted and there's like nothing left. The Arthur Moat Show. I agree, man. It's a great show. It's a great show. Got me. For everybody listening who was like, why did he stutter 100 times on that question? The Moat Show thing got me. Got me real quick. The worst part about this season is we have to absolutely stink this year to get rid of him, as in Matt Canada. I agree, man. I agree. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers' biggest downfall. It will remain their biggest downfall, is that they do not know how to get rid of people. They are too nice. You're too nice to be in a professional football team. You got to be mean. You got to have a backbone, and I don't think they do. How low or high will the Steelers take a backup quarterback? This is another great question. I think that Jaron Hall is a huge name to watch in the 7th round for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think they take one before the 7th round, but I think that they'd have their eyes on a 7th round quarterback just because Mitch Trubisky's got 1 year left on his deal. You get rid of him after this season. You bring in somebody now to be the 3rd quarterback. Usually you have 4 in training camp. If you have 3, I think that's okay. And you let him develop as the practice squad guy this year. Maybe you keep him on the active roster, or at bare minimum, you just protect him throughout the season if you could get him onto the practice squad without showing him too much in training camp, and operate that way so that next year he's your backup quarterback. But I do think that it's definitely on their list. I would be somewhat surprised if they didn't take a quarterback, or if a guy like Hall or Clayton Tune, that I think is rising more than falling in the draft, isn't immediately signed as an undrafted free agent, like right after the draft. Aubrey Miller, another name to watch. Are we not on Noah Sewell anymore? I think Noah Sewell is a good player. The tape on Noah Sewell is rough. It looked way better a year ago than it did today. I think he's got a lot of very athletic traits, but I also think that he doesn't really fit what the Pittsburgh Steelers are necessarily looking for. I don't know his pass coverage ability or how good he is at it. He's very instinctual, but he's what the Steelers are looking for and what they've had are different things. I think they're looking for a more athletic, could hit, but could definitely pass protect or pass coverage linebacker. Whereas Noah Sewell is kind of just like you need somebody to go get somebody in the backfield. Noah Sewell could go do it because his timing is ridiculous. His reaction time when it hits is very, very good. I just don't know if he falls into that need for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I should say. On top of that, I think the inside linebacker class is kind of weak, and the position itself is losing value. Like there are just time and time again where a guy like Devin Lloyd has been told to me, like, this guy's going to be the best dude in the draft. And then he gets drafted and he isn't that good in year one. And people are like, well, another really good inside linebacker who just didn't turn out to be a superstar immediately. I think people just are starting to lose as much interest at that position. That's just my thoughts. I think that you could develop a fourth. You could go find a Mark Robinson in the 6th or 7th round and turn him into a potential backup in year 2. And I think because of that, guys like Noah Sewell maybe aren't worth a 17 or 32 pick. What if we're throwing smoke screens to get the CBs of the future? I could 100% see this happening. I could see the Steelers double dipping at corner. I could see the Steelers using their first 2 picks at corner. I'm not ruling any of that out. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers love this cornerback class. They see what they have in Levi Wallace, but he's not a long-term solution. He's a Steven Nelson. If he works out in year 2, awesome. If he doesn't, you'll get rid of him. Akello Witherspoon, I think, is still here with some potential, and I get people don't really like him, but I think he's got some potential. And Patrick Peterson is here for a short-term 1 to 2 year deal, depending on how much longer he's got in the NFL. You could 100% use pick 17, get a guy like Joey Porter Jr. or Deonte Banks, and then come back at 32 or come back at 49 and get a guy like Julius Brents or Emmanuel Forbes or Clark Phillips or Tyreek Stevenson, and just have your cornerback core of the future, and you're not worrying about missing out on other positions. At that point, the offensive tackles are gone. You don't need an offensive tackle. If you're drafted a corner at 17, that means all of the offensive tackles that you wanted are no longer on the board. After those guys, the offensive tackle class takes such a strong dip that who cares? Like, you want a guy like DeJuan Jones at 49, cool. You draft Julius Brents at 32 or Tyreek Stevenson at 32. You feel really good about that. I think that if the Steelers wanted to double dip a corner early, it would not be a bad move whatsoever. Do I believe that the wide receiver class or the wide receiver room is full? I don't. I do not. I think that, look, there's got to be some reason. And I don't think that Mel Kiper Jr. or Peter King or any of these people that are tossing out, the Steelers are going to get Zay Flowers, have, a really, really strong connection to say that they're definitely going to do it. And I, by no means, would live off of their mock drafts and say, this is law. It's going to happen. I trust it, especially Mel Kiper Jr. I will say this. Peter King and Mike Tomlin are very, very close friends. Very good friends. Have been for a long time. And I'm not saying that Mike Tomlin told Peter King that he wants a wide receiver, that he wants Zay Flowers, because I don't think that he did. I actually fully don't believe that he even had one conversation about Zay Flowers. What I do know is that I think that Peter King has some knowledge, and maybe Mel Kiper Jr. has some knowledge that the Pittsburgh Steelers do like the wide receivers in this class if that is the best player available to them at 17. And if one of those two is available at 17, and I think it'd have to be both of them, I'm not going to rule it out. I will say this, it's not going to be Zay Flowers. If you could, if they get to pick, if Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers are both on the board, and I just talked about this in my Steelers to go today, you call Kenny Pickett into the room and you say, what one do you want? And anybody who thinks he's going to say Zay Flowers doesn't know who Kenny Pickett is, or doesn't know what he's done, or doesn't know who Jordan Addison is, or have paid attention to Jordan Addison before he went to USC. You take Jordan Addison. You've seen the film that you need to see on this guy. He's playing with Kenny Pickett, and they were phenomenal together. That's your guy. So now, is the wide receiver position full? No, definitely not. I think Gunnar Olszewski probably gets cut. I think Anthony Miller is a long shot to make this team. Miles Boykin's definitely on the team, but I think that right now that would be my 5 is Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, Miles Boykin, and then you could keep a 6th just like they did last year, and it could be a rookie. And I think that even if it's not in the first round, even if it's not a Jordan Addison or a Zay Flowers, you could definitely go find a guy like Josh Downs or, Jonathan Mingo later in the draft and feel very good about them and have another weapon for Kenny Pickett. You want as many weapons as possible for Kenny Pickett. The Steelers tried to hide that. I think it's hilarious that Art Rooney tried to tell me, no, we really like our weapons that we have on offense, and then got rid of all of them because they clearly wanted to build around Kenny Pickett. They just didn't want to say it because, they try to create a smokescreen, but the owner of the team shouldn't be the one creating a smokescreen. They're not very good at it. I think that was funny. What about Anton Harrison at 32? I think that Anton is a very good piece to develop. My concerns there are how patient are you willing to be while people are very upset with Dan Moore Jr.? Because people are not going to be happy that Dan Moore is the starting left tackle if they draft a tackle at 32. But Anton Harrison is not ready to play in the NFL this year. He's certainly not ready to start in the NFL this year. And if you draft him, you have to draft him with the anticipation that he's got to sit for at least a year. And you got to let Dan Moore Jr. be your starting left tackle for at least a year. And if they could deal with that and say that that's comfortable with them to take a tackle and let him develop, totally fine. I think that's a possibility. But I also think that at the same time, if that's your mindset, what's stopping you from making a move for next season to go get a left tackle next season in the draft when the left tackle class might be better than it is this year, and just plugging that in then instead of wasting a pick on a guy that might not play for a year or two? That's my thought with Anton Harrison. I think he's a very good player. I think he's the 4th best corner or offensive tackle in this draft because I have Peter Skoronski as an interior offensive lineman. I think that's where he's going to end up in the NFL. But I think that he's right behind Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, Darnell Wright, and then I think it's Anton Harrison. I think he's a good left tackle, but I think the left tackle class it's weak. Could the Steelers double dip at offensive tackle? I don't think so. I just don't think that the offensive tackle class is very good. I actually think it's very bad. You could get one of those top guys, and they're good. They're quality starters. They're most of them day one guys. Those top 3 guys are day one guys. After that, they're all developmental pieces. I think a lot of them are right tackles. I don't think that they're very high on DeJuan Jones these days. So I would say no, but just because of the value of offensive tackle in this class, it's just really not good. I think the Steelers trade up to 9 or 11 and then trade the 32nd pick for draft capital. I agree. I think that that's definitely a possibility right now. I think it depends on how the board falls. No moves will be made until the board falls and the draft starts and we see where guys like Paris Johnson go, Broderick Jones go, Jalen Carter goes, all these guys. If somebody falls to 9 or falls to 11, the Steelers will make those phone calls and they will make them fast. And Omar Khan will be on the phone with Ryan Poles or whoever to make these moves happen. 32, I fully anticipate them trading. Like I have such a hard time believing that they're going to make a trade or a selection at 32. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Hasn't made any sense to me. You're going to get so many phone calls between the end of the first round and the beginning of the second round. And Mike Tomlin said it today. The Steelers don't have a glaring need on either side of the football. So why do you need the first pick in the second round? Unless somebody's there that is a stud that somehow fell out of the first round, move. Get out of there and take as much draft capital as you could possibly get. I want Jackson Smith-Njigba as an Ohio State fan, but if Addison is available at 17, you have to get him for Kenny. I think if the Steelers go wide receiver, I don't think Jackson Smith-Njigba makes it to 17. I think he's clear and far above as the best wide receiver in this draft class. But yeah, again, if Jordan Addison makes it to 17 and the Steelers' thought process is 17, you go Jordan Addison over Zay Flowers 100%. I think wide receiver is like fourth on their to-do list, but I do believe that. I don't believe that players, including Big Ben, have ever been asked who they wanted to draft. They will not be calling Kenny to ask what wide receiver he wants. Okay. Sounds good. I think that they trade up to 9 or 11 to draft Jones or Johnson. Then they trade yes, 100%. I agree with that one. I think those are the two names. Ringo, huh? This is all right, Jeremy. This is a good one. We need a tackle, but I would not be pissed at Deonte Banks or Keely Ringo. So Keely Ringo, in my head, is not going to go in the first round. My thought on Keely Ringo is I think Keely Ringo is a very talented corner. I don't understand how he has slid as far as he has at this point. I think the Steelers could possibly get a steal for this guy and trade their 32nd pick back to maybe like 35, 40, something around those lines. Draft Keely Ringo there, get draft capital, and get their corner that they want. Because Keely Ringo seems like the guy that they have their eyes on and have had their eyes on for a while. Just makes so much sense. A dude who is lengthy, super fast, super athletic. Where he struggles is his reaction time is and his back pedal is non-existent. So you learn those two things from Patrick Peterson. I mean, how much better can you get? I think that's the perfect move. I don't think he's the pick at 17. I think Deonte Banks could be the pick at 17. But my thought on Keely Ringo is you have the possibility to get this guy as an absolute steal in the early to middle part of the second round, when at one point people were talking about if this guy's going to go in the top 10. But they were going to talk about Jordan Addison that way too. Was it me, or did Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan look so happy at their press conference? They are feeling really good about this draft, it seems. It 100% seems this way. And Tristan, I'm going to go off of you for a second here. I think that the Steelers have a new mindset because I think Omar Khan is bringing a new mindset to the Steelers. I think they did things like somewhat acknowledge and just kind of toss it out there that 32nd pick is available, because I think Omar Khan is playing this new form of football. He's adapting. He is the next general manager who understands and has studied what general managers are. You know, that was the thing with Kevin Colbert. I think Kevin Colbert was a phenomenal general manager. I love Kevin Colbert. I think he's a phenomenal person. Nothing but respect to him and what he's done in his career. But you hit a point in your career where everything just becomes like turnover. It's just, okay, well, I know how to do this, so we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. Omar Khan has spent the last 12 months studying how to be an excellent general manager. And what he has studied is the past and the present, and he has brought the present to Pittsburgh. And I think that it has totally changed how they do things. They don't have to be afraid of things. They don't have to hide anything. They don't have to create these smoke screens or be miserable all the time or whatever. And I'm not going to say that Mike Tomlin or Kevin Colbert were miserable. I think they love what they do, and they are all smiles all the time. If you see Mike off camera, like just talking to Mike Tomlin at football practice or, you know, in the cafeteria or whatever, he's a great dude. Like, he's always cracking jokes. He's always smiling. He's always busting somebody. That's just who he is. But I think that Omar Khan, man, has brought just this new flavor, this new feeling to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think they're loving it because they could be a little carefree and trust that, like, hey, man, let's go about this certain ways and let's do this certain ways and let's have fun with this, because at the end of the day, we're going to get it right. And we know we're going to get it right. And it feels really good, man. It does. I feel you 100%. what is the best case scenario for the top 3 picks and the worst case scenario for the top 3 picks? I think the worst case scenario for the top 3 picks is doing something dumb like drafting DeJuan Jones at 17. Or Tyreek Stevenson at 17 would be up there as well. The best case scenario for the top 3 picks is easy. You somehow land Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson at 17, no questions asked. Even if you have to trade up for him, I'm cool with that one, but we'll stick with the top 3 picks. So you draft one of those guys. At 17, Julius Brents or Tyreek Stevenson are there, and you could pick between those two or Keely Ringo, one of those 3, and you feeling real good. And then at 49, a name like Jack Campbell, or I don't even know if somehow Osiris Torrance falls that far. I couldn't tell you. Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin would be awesome. Something like that. Those 49 pick guys that you're just like, I'd love to get this guy. If one of those 3 guys is there, 49, and then you could get one of those 3 corners at 32, and you could get your star left tackle at 17, that's easily the best one. Ramon Foster said they asked him about his opinion during the draft, and they asked other players too. I'm sure they've asked Kenny at this point. Yeah, they do. They, everybody's got their opinion. Everybody has their thoughts on how the Pittsburgh Steelers operate. I've learned over the years how the Pittsburgh Steelers operate in this situation and in this scenario and in this environment. And there is zero chance that they won't ask Kenny Pickett about a wide receiver if that wide receiver is Jordan Addison. Would they ask him about Jonathan Mingo? No, probably not. But they probably would ask him about the guy that he played with for 2 years or for a year at Pitt and had all these awards with. I'm guessing this is for the top 3 picks, 100%. Draft a linebacker, corner, and a center. Joe Tippmann, man, he's got the best hair in the draft. And if Creed Humphrey showed us anything, it's that a center with a mullet is a center that you want on your football team. Keely Ringo moves more like a safety than a corner. I agree, but I think that he has the ability to be a really good corner. Like, I think that he moves like a safety. I don't think you move him to safety. I think that you just try to work with him at corner and get him to work his back pedal better and have some type of direction change. If you could do those things, I think he's a phenomenal safety who could run with guys like Jamar Chase, and you really need that on the outside in the AFC North. It's very possible that they draft Darnell Washington at 17 if they don't trade up, and he would be able to help Dan Moore on the left side. That does make sense too. And I think that Darnell Washington is an option there at 17, 100%. I think Darnell Washington's also an option if they decide to move back from 17. I'm not going to rule him off their board at all. I think he's a blocking tight end. I do think he helps Dan Moore, but I don't think you draft a tight end to try and help your left tackle. Like, I don't. I think if your options are to replace your left tackle and upgrade the position or draft a tight end, you're going to go and replace your left tackle and upgrade the position. It's not a feasible, like you're literally just adding a player to the field and removing a weapon for Kenny Pickett because your left tackle is incapable of being an every down left tackle. I agree with what you're saying 100%, Matt, but in the grand scheme of things, if they had the ability to draft this guy over a tight end, I think they're going to do it. Steeler Lee, appreciate you. Absolutely no disrespect to Colbert, but his methods became outdated. Plus, Ben's contract didn't help matters either. This is time for us to finally evolve into the new NFL. So I'm going to go off of this because this is another thing that stood out to me at the press conference today that I thought was very riveting. Excuse me. Got to go work out after this. You know what I mean? Need a little bit of energy. So my thing with the evolving into the new NFL, which excited me, is Mike Tomlin said it. He said, in the last 2 years, we have not ran away from change, that we have run towards change, run towards the development and the evolution, I believe he said, of certain positions and certain ways of thinking. I think that that's Omar Khan. I think that Omar Khan has said and has laid out the groundwork, because you have to remember, Omar Khan wasn't some dude who just stepped in here day one, had no knowledge of these people, walked into Art Rooney's office, slammed the door and said, look, we're doing it this way because I know it's going to work. He's been in this facility working right next to Art Rooney for the last 20 years. So for him to sit down and say, hey, look it, This is what we've done for so long. It has worked. Obviously, we've had tons of success, but the NFL is changing, and I could see where it's changing. And I would like to evolve and go this way with certain things. And I think he explained it in a way that made sense. And then he proved it with things like the Chase Claypool trade, or, whatever you want to bring up in the last year that Omar Khan has done successfully. And then I think they started to listen and say, I think this guy knows what he's talking about. He's damn good at his job early in his career, and we should listen. And I think that's what they're doing. And it's working, and it's going to work. Like in years past, if Dan Moore wasn't the answer, and if Kevin Dotson wasn't the answer, they would have stuck that out until they could no longer stick it out. And I get it. Ben's contract didn't help. You're 100% right on that one. But they would not make these changes. They would push it out as long as humanly possible with the same guys and try to get them to click, because they do not give up on people. Now, they're doing that with Matt Canada. I get it. I think that's an Art Rooney thing. I don't think it's Omar Khan or Mike Tomlin. I think that's 100% Art Rooney. I think that he's just stuck in his ways. He doesn't want to be the guy that fires people. He doesn't want that reputation in the NFL that means something to him. I think it's dumb, but, it is what it is. With the rest of it, with how they're going about the trades, with how they're, looking at the NFL draft and being more open about their excitement about the possibilities of trades like 32. I think that's all Omar Khan. I think he's sitting around and he's a genius, and he knows how to do this, and he knows how to create the right smoke screens. It's not about hiding who you want anymore. It's about creating the ladder, creating the image of, hey, let's get people to call us. Let's make other teams want to do business with us that we want to do business with. We want these trades. We want this to happen. Why would we sit here and try and hide it? Instead, let's make things public so that people come to us. The price tag's bigger if people come to us. And I agree with you 100%. I think Kevin Colbert, like I said, all respect to what he did in his career. I think he's a phenomenal general manager, one of the best. But I think Omar Khan, man, he's bringing new evolution of football to Pittsburgh. I love what he's doing. And I think Mike Tomlin acknowledging that today was so big, like so big. It includes social media as well, 100%. The Steelers' social media accounts have been on fire. I don't know who the Steelers' social media guy is. I know their entire PR department. I know their photographer. I know their communications. I know everything. Can't figure out who this Twitter genius is. But they've been damn good. TikToks too, man. So good. So good. I like Deonte Banks more than Joey Porter Jr. I agree with you there. I think that Deonte Banks, I think only having 1 year to really show hurts his case, and people obviously know who Joey Porter Jr. is, and the fact that he almost came out last year certainly helps his case. But I think in the grand scheme of things, when you really sit down and watch both of their tapes, I think Deonte Banks might be one of the best corners in this draft. I think he's like neck and neck with Christian Gonzalez, and maybe not neck and neck, but much closer to Christian Gonzalez than people think. And I think, the whispers of Devin Witherspoon going at 3, I think is very real, because I think Devin Witherspoon is the best corner in this class. The Steelers did re-sign Miles Boykin. I think that was a great move, and somewhat of a great way to kind of top this off is that Miles Boykin is a dude who doesn't do much on offense that sparks your interest or catches your eye, but he is hands down the best run blocking wide receiver on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you cannot deny it. The dude plays such a strong role run blocking on the outside. It's awesome to see. It's fun to watch. Like if this is the first time that you've heard this and you've kind of like it's caught your attention, pay attention to it this season. Watch Miles Boykin when he's out on the field on offense, because I guarantee you it's going to be a run play, and I guarantee you he's going to put somebody on their ass, and it's awesome to watch. Him and Gunnar Olszewski. Gunnar Olszewski, a little dude, will knock you out running around the corner. It is awesome to watch. And on top of that, Miles Boykin might have been the best gunner in football last season, and that's huge to have. The ability to keep special teams guys for the Pittsburgh Steelers, new generation of special teams guys. Get rid of Marcus Allen, get rid of all these guys, upgrade them with Miles Killebrew, Miles Boykin, Tanner Muse. It helps Danny Smith's job tremendously and should revamp this special teams unit. All right. Tomlin seems rejuvenated regarding Omar Khan too. Colbert helped build the team that Tomlin won the chip, and then people give Cowher credit for it. The fascination seems motivated for sure. I think that Omar Khan, I've said this the whole time, and I'm going to continue to say it. I think that Omar Khan has a fire lit under him, and he's going to have it all off season because I think that, and Tomlin said it too. Tomlin's like, we keep making fun of him because he's talking so fast. I think he's talking fast because I think he's excited because he understands the opportunity, but he understands the grand scheme of the opportunity. He sees that he has a quarterback on a rookie deal that allows him to build a team to his liking. He sees that he has trust from the owner, and that owner is able to allow him to build the team of his liking. He sees that he has one of the best coaches in the NFL and a winning organization. He sees that he has building blocks like TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deontay Johnson, and now an offensive line. He sees that all these pieces are already in play, and now he's just got to top it off. He understands that the Super Bowl window is 3 to 5 years. If you can win a Super Bowl in 3 to 5 years from now, you are feeling really, really good as the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think 5 years is a little bit of a stretch, but I think if you could do it within Kenny Pickett's rookie deal, by the end of that 5th-year option, I mean, I think that's your best time. And I think Omar Khan sees it. I think he's super excited. And I think there's nothing more that he would love to do than come in his first full season as a general manager and win the Steelers' first playoff game in forever, it feels like at this point, and really just put these guys back on the map and steer them in the right direction. And I think he knows all that, and it feels really good. How does the Aaron Rodgers trade change the draft? I think they swap first-round picks. I don't know. I don't really know what the Green Bay Packers' needs are, so this is hard to address. But I think that, I don't know. I think that if anything, the Jets were an option to trade up for. I don't know if the Packers necessarily are at this point. But I would say that if the Steelers were going to go get an offensive tackle or make a move, it would be before that 12th pick or the 13th pick. I think the Jets pick at 13. So now the Packers would pick at 13. I think it would be before that 13th pick. That's where I would guess. I would say it's either 11, 9, maybe 8 till the Falcons, maybe 10 to the Eagles. I think that could be definitely an option, especially with the Andy Weidl connection. But I would think it would be before the Packers pick, so I don't think it really impacts it all that much. I would like to see one of these wide receivers if we don't get one in the draft, but Sammy Watkins, no thank you. Demarcus Robinson, maybe. Rashard Higgins, possibly, all available in free agency still. I'm a very big Sammy Watkins is not a good wide receiver pusher, I guess. I don't know. I think Sammy Watkins is not worth the money on any team. I think he just takes up cap space. And the Steelers already have that guy. It's Allen Robinson. I think Allen Robinson's a better Sammy Watkins. Can play inside, outside. Is supposed to have all this speed, but doesn't really have all this speed. Has reliable hands, but sometimes has drops. Allen Robinson doesn't have the drops. It just doesn't. I'm okay. I think that you'd rather just run it with what you have and maybe let Anthony Miller. I think Anthony Miller is a better option than Sammy Watkins. Rashard Higgins and Demarcus Robinson. I've actually heard Demarcus Robinson has been on the Steelers' radar, but I heard that the morning of the Allen Robinson trade. I heard it at like 5 a.m, the day that they traded for Allen Robinson. So I would assume that meant that they looked at those guys and then they got the deal for Allen Robinson and they said, oh, okay, well, we're going to go with Allen Robinson. So I don't know if any of them are still on their radar, but I like Demarcus Robinson a lot. I like Rashad Higgins as well. Sammy Watkins, I'm not very high on. Do you think we should pick a tackle first round, our biggest need, or give Dan Moore one more chance and go with the cornerback? Again, this is the biggest topic of conversation. It feels like the only thing we've talked about today. And that's because it's the only thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to consider. They're going to look at offensive tackles. They're going to look at corners in the NFL draft, and they're going to say, which one gives us a better advantage right now, and which one is better at the pick that we could get to or that falls to us. If it's at 17 and they slide, if Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson's there, you do not pass those up. Both of them are better than Joey Porter Jr. I don't know if they're better. I think Paris Johnson's better than Deontay Banks. I don't know if Broderick Jones is better than Deontay Banks. If you run into a situation where it's a Darnell Wright versus a Joey Porter Jr., Deontay Banks, I think maybe you could be swayed into a cornerback. it's a big question mark. I think it all depends on the name that's available there. I think if I'm building a team and I have the opportunity, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers and I have the opportunity to go after a guy like Broderick Jones, go after a guy like or like Paris Johnson Jr., I'm taking those two before I take Deonte Banks or Joey Porter Jr., just because I think that you could get a really good corner at 32 or 49. If we're sitting there at 17, if the Steelers are sitting there at 17 and Darnell Wright is the option compared to Joey Porter Jr. or Deonte Banks, I'm going with a corner. And then chances are I'm riding it out with Dan Moore Jr. one more year and then hoping for the best next year. Which player in the draft class fits Pittsburgh the best from need to culture and how they play, etc.? I think it's Deonte Banks. Like, I think he plays inside, outside. I think he's got the versatility. I think he's already got the back pedal. I think he's already got the twitchiness, the reaction time. He's super physical. I mean, Devin Witherspoon would be the answer, but I don't think that has any chance of making it to the Pittsburgh Steelers. People are talking about him going in the top 3 now, and I think that's a real possibility. I would say it's Deonte Banks. That would be my top choice there. I just think he's a physical, nasty corner who's super fast, who could keep up with the AFC, who, I mean, I don't know about his personality. I've never met him, but culture-wise, I mean, you want a guy that could come in here and learn from Patrick Peterson on the inside and on the outside. That's who you want. Joey Porter Jr. is a great dude. I think he is a super nice human being and a good corner and has all the athletics that you want, all the physicals that you want. But I just think Deonte Banks is a better corner. And if I had to say one of them, it would be them. But again, Devin Witherspoon's the answer. Like, Devin Witherspoon's definitely the answer. Nasty, physical, fast, could come up with the football, could play inside, outside. Like, he just spits out Pittsburgh Steelers football. He's not going to be the pick because he's not going to make it that far. He's not even going to make it far enough for the Steelers to make a move for him, which is unfortunate because the times where you thought he'd be sliding to 17 felt really good and really, really exciting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, with that, we're about an hour 10 in here. I'm going to head out. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another live stream here at All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check out the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts and subscribe there as well. And check out the merch. The merch could be found anywhere. Just Google bonfire.com/All Steelers Talk. Oh, we'll answer this one before we go. Do you think that we sign a veteran like Teddy Bridgewater? Carson Wentz, not a chance. Joe Flacco, Matt Ryan, Slim Mitch is not it when Kenny is down. Mitch Trubisky will be the backup quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers 100%, and he will be the guy that goes in if Kenny Pickett does go down 100%. I think a rookie quarterback is your go-to there. I think Mason Rudolph is your backup plan, but I don't think Mason Rudolph wants anything to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Outside of that, Teddy Bridgewater, all those guys are going to want higher deals and better roles than what they'll get in Pittsburgh, maybe except for Joe Flacco. You sign him if you need him 1 week, but besides that, I think you try to get a guy, develop, hope for the best with Kenny, and just say, well, Mitch is a very hit or miss quarterback, but when he hits well, and he'll win you some games. All right, with that, again, we're heading out. Thank you guys so much. I will be back on Wednesday with Steven for the full podcast, and me and Derek will be back on Friday to recap pick number 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Super exciting times. If you guys have any questions, make sure to DM me on Twitter at Noah Strackbine. Enjoy a wonderful draft week. We are only 3 days away. It's getting exciting. Peace.